Hello guys, good afternoon guys, and welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on all things Chicago Bears. I'm Owen W. James and this is the UK guys. We're in the UK. It is just a little after 2:15 here in the United Kingdom. I know over there in Chicago it's currently 8:15 in the morning. It's a weird thing, doing podcasts in the UK when you're talking about American sports. It's one of the weirdest things in the world. It really genuinely is. You talk about getting the times and obviously time zones. It really does trip with your head. It really does. And we're obviously going to hopefully get some podcast obviously a little bit later in the day as well. Aim obviously to do some around sort of, 6-7 o'clock American time to bring in some sort of the evening viewers once people have finished work. I know over there people obviously getting ready for work or have been to work. Depends obviously where you are in your professional journey, but we're here. Get some podcast. It's my day off today. Just had to drop the missus back at work. Apologies for the slightly late start, of course. Now, look, it is Green Bay week. It is the biggest rivalry in the NFL. It is the most heated rivalry in the NFL, and obviously, it's a rivalry that's kind of been hyped a little bit more by Ben Johnson, to some degree Matt LaFleur as well. I did put out a post on X earlier talking about Matt LaFleur. I mean, look, Matt LaFleur, a guy who, is always crying for calls, a guy who is always moaning, whinging, whining about calls, a guy who can't take a joke either. I did say that in the UK, we would call him a whinging pussy, or a whinging fanny would be another word for him over here in the UK. He's a really not nice guy. He's an objectionable kind of guy, not a guy I kind of like. Obviously, that rivalry sort of stoked up even more by Ben Johnson's comments when he took the Bears head coach's job, when he talked about the fact that, in his opinion, he likes beating Matt LaFleur. I mean, that's obviously, a bit of a decent record there. He's got a 3-0 record at Lambeau against Matt LaFleur, obviously, when he was the OC for the Detroit Lions. And obviously, Matt LaFleur did kind of respond a little bit on the Pat McAfee show the other day when he said about, Bears have got a good head coach. Just ask Ben Johnson. Obviously, I think a little bit of a slight poke at Ben Johnson there. So I think it's going to be exceptionally interesting on Sunday. The post-game handshake will be quite interesting between the two. Whether it's a frosty handshake or whether it's a head coach's mutual respect handshake will be a very interesting one, obviously, to pick up on. Guys, just a reminder, if you haven't caught this podcast live, please obviously smash a like on the video and obviously subscribe to the channel. We're doing really well. I'm really pleased with how the channel is currently going. We're at 407 subscribers. That's where we're at the moment on our journey to 1,000. My aim is to get to 1,000. My aim is to bring the channel obviously up to monetization, and once we get monetized, then we can do a whole lot more with the channel. I got asked a question the other day by someone in the UK about, do I do a lot of podcasts? I do actually do content, football content, soccer content. I'm a big Glasgow Rangers fan here in the UK. I do have a Glasgow Rangers channel, which is over 8,000 subscribers. So I do have some background in podding as well. Right, look, let's talk a little bit of this game, going into this game at the weekend. And obviously, one of the big stories, obviously, that's doing the rounds at the moment is around Caleb Williams. And I think we've got to get some things into perspective around Caleb. We really do have to get some things into perspective. And I know Caleb is one of those people who... There's still some within our fan base who don't like Caleb. I don't get it. I don't understand why. There's the Bajan baddies, obviously, who seem to want Tyson Bajan as our quarterback, who don't want to see Caleb succeed. And I don't get it. I mean, I genuinely don't get how any Bears fan could genuinely want Caleb to fail. If you're an actual fan of a team, why would you want somebody within your organisation to fail? I genuinely don't understand that, because if they fail, your team fails. And that's just not a good look, guys. That is just not a good look. And like I said, why would you want to do that? It's just, for me, absolutely pointless. But look, Caleb is having a decent season. He's having a pretty decent season. And, Ben Johnson's spoken about how highly he rates Caleb. And, Caleb's one of the big reasons why Ben Johnson came to Chicago. Now, Caleb is going to go into Lambeau at the weekend. He is undefeated at Lambeau. Obviously, as Seth Rollins reminded us during the draft and reminded the Green Bay fans during the draft in Green Bay, which I think was hilarious. King of the North, still undefeated at Lambeau Field, Mr. Caleb Williams. Caleb obviously has his issues this season, and I'm not going to sit here this afternoon or whenever you're watching this pod and then pretend to you that Caleb is the complete article, that he's the finished article. But there's one thing you're going to have to deal with, guys, and that is that Caleb is the quarterback, and going forward, Caleb is going to be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Barring an absolute dire drop-off in form or an absolute nightmare, nightmare or run of performances, this guy is going to be our quarterback going forward. So, we've got to really get behind him and accept that this guy has the ability and has the talent to become elite. This is a guy who, potentially could be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You had a situation this week where Howie Long was praising and calling him the next John Elway. And I think there are some similarities between him and Elway. To certainly his mobile nature. He is very mobile, just like John Elway. He has a hell of an arm on him, just like John Elway. Now, I'm not saying, for a minute that this guy is John Elway. He's not, he's nowhere near the John Elway, the Hall of Fame John Elway. Ellie, welcome. Where are you watching from, Ellie? Technically, he's a rookie this year. He's improving. I agree. And I think, this is one of the points I wanted to make. This is his sophomore year in name, but effectively, this is his rookie year. Now, I'm not saying that last season he had a disaster of a season. He didn't. He had a pretty decent season. Yes, he was sacked 68 times. Yes, he had to work for Shane Waldron and he had to work for Matt Eberflus, and he went through several play callers, several coaches. He didn't have a real coached experience last year. He was kind of thrown in the deep end, left to get on with it, not much support. Ellie's in Chicago. Welcome, Ellie. Great to have someone in Chicago, Illinois watching today. I think at the end of the day, he has had a year where he had nothing. He had no support. This is effectively, like Ellie says, his rookie year. He is developing as a quarterback this year. He is improving as a quarterback this year. He is learning a new scheme. And as Ben said, the install that's going on here, this scheme will get more and more complicated as the weeks go on. Ben is developing this scheme. Ben is improving this scheme week in, week out. And he's adding in all the times. I think the trust that Ben has in Caleb is clear to see in games. Now, in that game against Philly, he could have seriously had opportunities there, Ben, just to turn Caleb into a check down Charlie, just basically tell him to check it down for the rest of the game and not go for it. But if you look at that game, if you watch back the game tape from the game, he is constantly pushing Caleb to throw deeper, to throw into tighter windows, to check, to move, to be that quarterback who takes a chance on routes. Now, yes, his completion percentage in that game weren't great. Let's get this clear. It weren't fantastic. But at the end of the day, there was, I think, at least 5, 6, 7 receptions he could have had back. There was one where Almeida Zacchaeus is running a route. He stops running the route. I think if Zacchaeus continues that route, Caleb hits him and Zacchaeus is in for a touchdown. There's another one that Dunze, I think, stopped on a route or quit on a route where he could have got himself open and got the ball. And automatically there, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 more receptions are going to boost up that completion percentage. Now, look, I think a lot of his completion percentages is down because of the fact that he goes for those more ambitious throws. He does not just go for the simple, easy, check down, short yardage throws. If you look at a lot of the times that Caleb misses or Caleb doesn't complete, it's because he is being pushed to throw those deeper routes, to those longer routes. Now, I fully expect this week to see a much better passing game. Now, you may say to me, how do you know? Why are you going to see a much better passing game this week? Because, let me tell you why. Ben Johnson called out the receivers. He called out the passing game in his most recent press conferences. He talked about how, routes weren't being finished, that routes weren't refined enough, how the passing game was a bit of an issue at this moment in time. He then obviously clarified those remarks by saying obviously he wasn't aiming those at Caleb and that he was really happy with how Caleb's development was going despite what stats may show. I don't know if I've still got the quotes on that. Have I still got the quotes on what? Here we go. This was it. Just a reminder. He said Ben Johnson wanted to clarify what he meant about the passing game struggles and how Caleb's stat line from Philly isn't something he's upset with. This is obviously per Courtney Cronin. He said, when I made that comment yesterday, it's easily construed as I'm not happy with the quarterback. That's not the case whatsoever. He continues to get better each and every week, and I couldn't be more pleased with how he played last week. And I know what the stats say. Throw those out the window. He's doing a really good job managing the ball game, and that's the number one step for a quarterback. So, you know, he talked about obviously not being happy with the passing game. But one thing you've got to note, guys, is if you look at Ben Johnson, every time he's called out something, every time he said something's broken and it ain't working, or something isn't good enough, or something isn't up to standard, what happens the week after that? That becomes fixed. That becomes sorted. That becomes spot on. And to me, what I think we're going to see at Lambeau this weekend is a much better passing attack from the Chicago Bears. Because I think Ben would have been pushing Caleb, will be this week, for the rest of the week. Obviously, there was no practice yesterday. Practice today, practice Friday. You know, they will be, I think, pushing those Bears receivers, pushing Caleb to improve, to get that passing game up to somewhere near what he is looking for. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that this is going to be finished. This is the finished article. This is going to be the end game of this passing attack. I'm not saying that for a minute, but what I'm saying is I think we're going to see a big improvement this Sunday, given what he said. As I've said, the moment Ben calls something out, the moment Ben identifies something as not being good enough, as not working, as not being up to standard, you suddenly see an improvement in that the week after. That's how zero focused in. That's how laser focused this guy is on making things better in Chicago. And I think, you know, that's kind of why we are where we are. We're 9-3. We are 9-3. We are top of the NFC North, currently NFC number 1 seeds. And look, yeah, guys, don't get carried away. Let's not think the job is done, because it ain't done. You know, you look at the schedule that's upcoming. It's the toughest schedule, one of the toughest schedules left in football. I think there was a stat I saw the other day that basically said that I think we've got the third toughest schedule to finish off with. I think the Packers have got the toughest. I think the Niners have got the second toughest, and we've got the third toughest schedule. Obviously, the Browns been the one that slightly weakens that schedule. But you look at our schedule to finish, we are playing all teams with winning records. Twice against the Packers, once against the Niners, and obviously once against those Detroit Lions. So we are in a situation, and obviously 3 of those games also are inter-division matchups, inter-division rivalry. So it is a tough schedule to finish. But Ben, like I said, I think has got this team in such a place as we are a different bunch. Even from the 2018 Bears, even from the 2006 Bears, we are a different bunch. We are a group that, to me, looks like it is not happy with where it is. It constantly wants to get better. It constantly wants to improve. It doesn't accept mediocre. It doesn't accept average. It doesn't accept good. It wants to get better all the time. You know, as we know the slogan, guys, you know the slogan. But this team is moving forward. This team is substantially moving forward. And the mindset, I think, that Ben Johnson has installed within this team is fundamentally a hell of a lot better than even in previous years. So, look, let's look at this in reality. This team is going places. Now, look, I ain't pretending that this weekend is going to be easy. Lambeau is a tough place to go. Jordan Love is, as much as it pains me to say it, a decent QB. They have Micah Parsons. They've got a pretty decent secondary. They've got a pretty decent run defense. Their defense, you know, as Ben Johnson himself said, this is going to be the toughest defense we face so far this year. These guys are no mugs, you know, as we say in the UK, no mugs, no idiots, no losers, whatever. They're a decent bunch. And the Bears are going to have to bring their A game if they're going to win this game this weekend. And they're going to have to put the performance on. Now, as I've said already, and I've touched on it, the passing game will have to improve and step it up. And that's got to be something we see this weekend. And I'm confident we're going to see that from Caleb and from the rest of the receivers this weekend. You know, if you look at that receiving core, if you look at who we've got in that receiving core going into this weekend, there's Rome Odunze, if he's fit. There's, obviously, I think he will be. DJ Moore, Omid Zacchaeus, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, Dondre Swift, Carmen Ungai, all guys who can catch that football. Colston Loveland, for me, is one of the very, very best rookie tight ends in the league at this moment in time. Red zone, third down, he's one of your go-to guys. And I think the more he continues to improve, the more that Ben is going to factor him into the scheme, the more we're going to see from Colston Loveland. The same from Luther Burden as well, who incidentally is outperforming Matthew Golden, who was the guy who the Packers took in the first round over Luther Burden. And as Burden, if I can remind you, said pre-season, during the season, he said, those guys who overlook me, they're going to pay. And it starts this weekend, guys, doesn't it? Packers going to pay. So the receiving core there are quality. They are there. And I think they will see that step up. And like I said to you, Ben always, when he identifies something as being wrong, as been broken, fixes it for that next week. The second, obviously, is that offensive line and run attack that we have. They've got a big part to play this weekend. For me, we need to establish the run early. We need to establish the run early, run the ball down Green Bay's throats. Absolutely push them around. Now, people have talked about the fact that Green Bay have a very good outside run defense, probably one of the best in the NFL, and they held Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery to 3.5 yards per carry last week, which is pretty good considering Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are, two of the best backs in the 1-2 punches in the NFL. However, the Lions' offensive line at the moment is nothing to write home about. Now, Dan Orlovsky, as I mentioned in the video this morning, has called our offensive line as one of the best in the game. One of the best in the game. So for me, this weekend, we've got to see, I think, as well, the offensive line continue with that level of performance. Start to push that that Green Bay D-line around, push them back into their linebackers, open those gaps, establish that run nice and early. Now, there's a worry there. Of course, there's a concern there. Micah Parsons, obviously, is a guy who will get after Caleb. Now, obviously, it'd be interesting to see where Micah Parsons lines up. Does he line up over Darnell Wright? Does he change the lineup over Ozzie Trapillo or Theo Benedette, whoever's in there? Where does he line up? That's going to be a big thing. Now, one of the slight concerns on this issue is that Micah Parsons is quick. Micah Parsons gets into that backfield quicker than most. Caleb has struggled at times this year to get away from elite level pass rushers. Now, against those second level ones, he has succeeded and he is very good at escaping. Don't get me wrong. His mobility is outstanding. His mobility is he's one of the most mobile QBs in the NFL. However, he struggled against Max Crosby. He struggled against TJ Watt. He's got, obviously, Micah Parsons this week. He's got Myles Garrett next week. So, there is an element there that is something he's going to have to watch for. And the offensive line have to play a big part in protecting him against that pass rush from Micah Parsons. I think we're going to see a lot of 12 and 13 personnel this weekend. A lot of the tight ends being used to help support and block against Parsons this weekend. And I think that's going to be a key. Stop Parsons, stop that Green Bay defense from getting after Caleb. Give Caleb the time to go and create, to go and be that manager, that leader that Ben Johnson spoke about. So the offense, I think, if you look at the two sides of the ball, the offense is performing exceptionally well. The running attack is the second best in the NFL. It's only that game that Buffalo had the other day against the Steelers where they just ran all over the Steelers that we have a situation where they've obviously overtaken us. You look at our points per game, it's absolutely excellent. You look at all different elements. This offense is an offense that is going places. It is very, very good. I mean, just to share some statistics with you on our offense and how well. And, if you go back over time, when was the last time the Bears had an offense that was so highly thought of and there was such a high-powered, dangerous offense? Like I said, second best running attack in the NFL. If I had said that to you at the start of the season, you'd have laughed at me, especially with how bad that offense was when you were getting jokes like DeAndre Swift is only getting a game for the Chicago Bears because he's Taylor Swift's brother, which was a joke I did see on one social media platform. But yeah, if you look at our stats in our offense, right? You look at the stats from the offense. This is taken from ESPN. Just waiting for my information to load, and I will share this information with you shortly. But yeah, if you look at the total yards per game, we are ranked currently 6th with 374.3 yards per game, only 0.5 behind Kansas, and only 1.1 behind the Indianapolis Colts. The Detroit Lions 376.3, the Bills at 381, and the Dallas Cowboys at 393.1. In terms of passing attack, in terms of our rank as a passing attack, we're not so good on the old passing side of it. We are ranked in the we're ranked around about midway on that with 220 yards per game. Rushing, like I said, second. In terms of points per game, we are ranked within the top 10 again at 3, 4, 6, 8th at 26.1 points per game. Only New England, the Rams, the Bills, the Seahawks, the Lions, the Cowboys and the Colts have a better points per game than us. We're actually better than the Green Bay Packers, who are 24.5 points per game. So our offense is absolutely outstanding. It is a very good offense, moving in the right direction. And I think what is exceptionally encouraging, guys, is this. Think about this. They are stats with an offense that isn't finished yet, an offense that isn't complete yet, an offense that's only going to get better over time under this head coach, under this offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle. It's going to continue to move forward. So there's positivity there all the time around that offense. Now, my slight concern going into this weekend will be around the defensive side of the ball. Now, one of the things we do need to do on the defensive side of the ball, I think, is improve our pass rush. Our pass rush has been pretty poor this season, has not been good at all. You know, we haven't obviously done as well in terms of sacks. Montez Sweat's been quiet. Obviously, Dioda Yingbo's out. Austin Booker's quiet enough. I think Gervon Dexter has the highest number of pressures. Grady Jarrett hasn't been what we'd hoped he could be. Now, as I mentioned on the video this morning, if you haven't checked it out, please check out this morning's video. We're getting back a lot of our secondary now. Jalen Johnson, obviously, is back. Kyler Gordon, CJ Gardner-Johnson, obviously, is playing a bigger role. Tyreek Stevenson could well be back this weekend as well. Nashawn Wright, whilst Nashawn obviously is big play boy and has issues over coverage sometimes, he still obviously, you know, has a part to play. Now, our secondary is improving. Now, one of the things that I think, you know, you look at in terms of helping your pass rush is when your secondary is locking down and stopping the quarterback having an open man to throw to. It slows down the ball release. So one of the things I think will help this weekend is obviously Jalen Johnson is getting fitter, Kyler Gordon is getting fitter, CJ Gardner-Johnson is being schemed into it a lot more, Tyreek Stevenson's likely to be back on a limited snap count, Nashawn Wright. We've got now a secondary that is coming back to full fitness, a secondary hopefully that will help the pass rush get home a little bit more, buy the pass rush a little bit more time. But it is something that is a slight worry. You know, one of the things that I said on the video this morning, and I will say again, is this. Jordan Love, as much as I hate Jordan Love and I hate the Packers, FGB, guys, FGB. We've got to get after Jordan Love. We've got to put him under a lot of pressure this weekend. If we give Jordan Love a clean pocket, if we give Jordan Love time to pass the ball, he is going to hurt us. That is one of the things that if you look at his stats, he's one of the top NFL quarterbacks when it comes to working in a clean pocket. It's got to be a situation that pass rush must try and get home. Now, secondary is going to have a big part to play in that. Having the linebackers back as well will help. Obviously, encouraging news that TJ Edwards and Noah Sewell are getting back into practice as well. So that is positive that both TJ and Noah could well be back. Nothing against Amon Onamabiga, I really struggle to say his name, and against DeMarco Jackson. But, you know, having TJ back, having Noah Sewell back, Tremaine's out for another couple of weeks, will help as well, I think. But the defense is coming back. Defensive stats at the moment are not quite as good. We are takeaway kings, the best in the NFL at taking the ball away. You know, in terms of total yards allowed, though, we are not great in terms of total yards allowed. You know, we're in the bottom half. We allow 359 yards per game. In terms of passing yards per game, we are again about just around heading towards midway with 225 yards allowed. And our run defense is certainly nothing to write home about at the moment. But I think that is something that will improve with the return of the linebackers. We're in the bottom half again. We're in the bottom 6 in terms of that. So, look, I think, you know, in terms of the defense, it is getting there. And Dennis Allen, don't get me wrong, has done an outstanding job this year, given the fact that he's had to deal with so many goddamn injuries. Dennis Allen has really had to deal with a lot, hasn't he, in terms of those players been out. Guys, just a reminder, if you've just found the channel, obviously welcome. I am from England. I don't just have a weird accent. I'm born in England, raised in England, became a Bears fan in '85. That was my first Super Bowl, watching the Bears beat the Patriots. The '85 Bears beat the Patriots, well, murder the Patriots in that game. Wouldn't it be nice for a Super Bowl rematch this year, 2025, 40 years on, Bears, Patriots, Drake May versus Caleb would be an excellent Super Bowl to have, in my opinion. But yeah, that's how I came to this. Guys, just obviously launch the channel. Please obviously hit a sub on the channel. Please obviously hit a like on the video and help us to keep on growing. Look, my aim with the podcast is always going to be to get you involved. Ellie's made some great comments this afternoon in the UK, morning in America. Obviously, please get involved more. Right, guys, look, the defense for me, Dennis Allen's done a great job for me. He's done a great job. And my big concern, obviously, is losing Dennis at some point. As someone comes back in to give him another head coaching gig, because he is, obviously that high quality. He is quality in what he's done. I think the defense, the big positive and the big hope that I've got for you guys and for the Bears going forward is that defense will now improve as the starters return. As the starters come back to the team, as we get more people fit, hopefully that will help this defense improve some of those categories and statistics going into the playoffs and help us to improve. Now, turnovers are going to be a big part. Obviously, Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over a great deal, so it's going to be an absolute must to try and turn that ball over. Kevin Byard and Deshaun Wright have been absolutely fantastic. Then Ellie says, we're here for a while. We've got to worry about Al Harris leaving. Yeah, that is a big one. I've read that as well, Ellie, that Al Harris has been linked with a number of DC jobs next season, which is a big concern. Obviously, Al Harris, for those of you who don't know, is a secondary coach. He is a big loss. If you look at the work, if he was to be lost, the work that he's done with, obviously, the work that he's done with Deshaun Wright and the work that he's done with that beat-up secondary this year has been unbelievable. Yes, DA does play a part, obviously, and then I think the clever schemes that DA comes up with help. But yeah, I agree. Al Harris would be a massive loss for this team going forward. Look, guys, it is a situation where Dennis Allen, I think this weekend, is going to have to bring some blitzes and bring some pressures in different ways. And I think having Kyler back, having CJ Gardner-Johnson, Mr. Shithouse himself, I think, we're going to have a situation where those guys are going to have to be cleverly schemed into some blitz packages to really put Jordan Love under pressure. But look, as I've said, I said on the video this morning, I've said on a number of videos recently, we're actually going into this game with Green Bay where we're not worried about them. You're not concerned about playing Green Bay. We're not concerned about being out-coached by Matt LaFleur and his Green Bay coaches. We're not concerned about that at all. This team we've got now is a different team. This coaching staff that we've got is a better coaching staff. So for me, going forward, we're going into these next two games out of three, which are two games both against Green Bay, with more of a hope of actually putting one over on them, of sweeping the Cheeseheads. Wouldn't it be great to sweep the Cheeseheads? Wouldn't it be great to beat them at Lambeau and then beat them at Soldier Field? And obviously probably then at that point clinch the NFC North, to shut them Cheeseheads the hell up. keep Caleb undefeated at Lambeau. And I think we've got the players to do that. And obviously Dennis Allen is going to have to be very clever this weekend with how he schemes things, changes things, what he shows the Packers and then what he actually does. Two different things. We're going to have to see that this weekend. Clever blitz packages, clever pressures. How he uses Kyler Gordon. We were told a lot at the start of the season that Kyler Gordon would be used in lots of different ways this season. Again, I think on Sunday and going forward against the Packers and then against the Lions on the final week of the season. That's when we're going to have to see Kyler obviously used in those different ways. Absolutely 100% different and 100% obviously getting involved in the game. Look, honestly, guys, going into this game, I am confident. I'm nervous. I'm worried. I'm excited. I'm on edge. I'm on edge because it's the Bears. It's the Bears. And yes, this is, like I said, across the pod today, they're different Bears. They're different Bears. But it's still the Bears. And it's still the Packers. And it's still a rivalry game. And anything can happen in a rivalry game. My predictions. I'm going to predict a 27-23 win for our Bears. That's my projection. 27-23 Bears. Caleb's going to have a massive game as well in this game on Sunday. Right, guys, that is it for this afternoon. It's only a short pod this afternoon. I do prefer longer ones, but I've got to go pick my daughter up from school. I've got to go and drive to pick her up. Thank you to Ellie for your comments. Absolutely fantastic to have an actual Chicagoan in the live chat. Absolutely love the city of Chicago. Guys, obviously, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And obviously, please keep checking out the channel. Keep checking out the videos. And always, please remember one thing above everything else. Bear down. And fuck Green Bay.